right, so let's talk about what happened today in court, day 28. Let me bring back in Law and Crime's in-court reporter, Elizabeth Milner, who's been there every day for all of the testimony, all of the action. Elizabeth, always great to see you. Thank you so much. So first up, we found out about scheduling, right? We found out when both sides are going to be finishing up, when the jury might be handed over the case. We even found out how long each side's going to have for closing arguments, which, by the way, I will tell you.
In a courtroom filled with silence and tension, Day 28 of the Diddy federal sex trafficking trial unfolded like a thriller movie, except the plot is painfully real. The defense team shocked everyone today by essentially throwing in the towel. Witnesses, no testimony from Diddy himself, no last-minute pivot.
I think it's one of the most important parts of this entire trial, given how complicated it is and how many different elements there are and how much the jury has to consider, and putting it all into context. Closing argument's so important. So what do we learn about scheduling?
Yeah, well, we learned that this case is wrapping up very quickly. I think in a way that's kind of shocking to even myself, where it's like, oh my God, we're really at the beginning of the end, because
what started as a battle between federal prosecutors and one of hip-hop's most powerful icons has now turned into a slow march toward what could be one of the most significant verdicts in celebrity criminal history. Diddy, once the kingmaker of Bad Boy Records, is now the silent man in the courtroom, his legal team reportedly pulling back their original strategy.
From what both parties were explaining in court today, it seems like both sides are ready and geared up for closing arguments to happen as soon as Thursday. And yes, Jesse, both sides are going to have plenty of time to get their final message to the jurors before they go and deliberate. And so each side will have an abundance of time, pretty much 4 hours for each side. And so the day, as far as Thursday goes, it should take up most of the day for closings, because of 4 hours each, that's 8 hours, probably a lunch break in between.
Shrinking their witness list to practically zero. Why sources suggest they're betting it, all on technical arguments and trying to punch holes in the timeline presented by the prosecution. But the problem is, the timeline is terrifyingly thorough. Prosecutors displayed a digital map of movements, financial receipts.
So we should see closings happen all day on Thursday. And then because they're going to be taking up most of the duration on Thursday, we can expect that the jury won't even get the case until Friday. And so things are moving pretty quickly. Now, whether or not the jury actually comes to a verdict on Friday, that's a wait and see. But for the most part, we can kind of finally see the beginning of the end with this case.
Yeah, 4 hours each for closings. I think they'll probably want all that time.
Hotel bookings and internal communications that suggest a network was in place, one that operated like a well-oiled machine. Flights were arranged for Jane Doe from Los Angeles to New York. Hotel bookings paid by Diddy's Amex card. Emails show assistants planning every detail down to the last minute, what time she would land, who would pick her up, and even which room she'd be staying in. And those weren't just any hotel rooms. They were 5-star suites at places like the Trump International Hotel, costing thousands of dollars per night. This wasn't random behavior.
I know that the first thing that's going to happen after the defense, after the prosecution finishes up their case, the defense is going to have this Rule 29 motion where basically after the prosecution, the government closes its case. They basically say, Judge, there's nothing for the jury to consider. You look at everything that was presented. You have to enter a judgment of acquittal on these charges because the evidence presented is insufficient to sustain a conviction.
It looked like choreography, and the prosecutors knew it. They even introduced screenshots of texts from Diddy's staff as assistants, his drivers, his managers coordinating pickups, cash drops, and even mentioning Plan B pills being left on the nightstand. One of the texts simply read, "She's landing in Vegas. You got her," followed by a thumbs-up emoji and a message saying, "Drips are ready." This so-called drip treatment referred to our fluids, meant to help people recover from
probably not going to be successful for them. And then you move into the defense's case, which, by the way, we found out about that too. I mean, there was a point when we thought the defense was going to call a number of witnesses. Is that not true anymore? Are they not calling any witnesses? Are they just putting on, what, exhibits or something?
Yeah, it seems like there was kind of a lot of mixed messaging this morning in terms of whether or not the defense will call witnesses or whether or not they'll just put in a bunch of exhibits, and that'll kind of be the most of their case in chief. But from my understanding of it all,
heavy partying, or, as the prosecution suggests, from something much darker. Audio clips were played in court too. You could hear Diddy's voice in some of the exchanges.com and Casual, confirming instructions given by his assistants. One audio recording included a woman saying, "She's not sober," followed by a male voice replying, "Just get her here." And just like that, the courtroom grew tense. The prosecution claims these aren't isolated events, they are patterns of behavior, coordinated acts carried out across multiple states, involving multiple people. That's why the government is pursuing RICO charges.
They still plan to call at least maybe one, maybe two witnesses. That is my understanding of everything. I know a lot of people would rather this case kind of wrap up and everything quickly, but it seems, again, from my understanding, that the defense at least plans to put on a couple of witnesses. Now, whether or not one of those witnesses is Sean Combs, I doubt that's going to happen, mainly because they plan on summations or closing arguments to be happening on Thursday. But initially, Jesse, they had kind of
The same law used to take down organized crime families, racketeering and trafficking. That's the core of the case. And with the defense refusing to put anyone on the stand, legal experts are beginning to believe this could be a tactical retreat. Maybe they think the evidence isn't strong enough to convict. Or maybe they know it is and there's nothing more they can say to counter it. As the trial moves toward closing arguments, set for Thursday, the pressure is on.
I wouldn't say a laundry list, but they had a long, lengthy list of witnesses that they were possibly planning on calling. Now, obviously, that dwindled all the way down. And then initially, when we were kind of getting towards the end of the government's case, the defense was like, okay, we plan on calling Dr. Bardet. We plan on calling Bashta. We plan on calling another witness. And then it seems like that 3-person witness list already trickled down probably to maybe one or two of those folks, possibly Bashta Dunlap, possibly Dr. Bardet. So we'll wait and see when the defense takes over for their case. But
The jury will soon be left with hours of testimony, hundreds of documents, digital receipts, and emotionally heavy messages. If even a portion of what's been presented feels credible to them, Diddy could be facing a long prison sentence. But more than that, this case is a cultural reckoning. It asks a deeper question. What happens when the powerful use their money and influence to hurt others behind closed doors? Jane Doe's voice, though largely anonymous in public, has echoed throughout the courtroom. She's not the only one.
for the most part, it seems like the defense case isn't going to be lasting as long as they initially anticipated when they initially thought it would be at least maybe 2 to 5 trial days. It seems like for the most part, it'll be just a day, maybe even a day and a half.
Yeah, some outlets are reporting that the defense is not planning on calling any witnesses. So we're getting mixed messaging. I'm happy you were there to like straighten it out for us, because I'll tell you, I think it's interesting. If they call no witnesses or they call
Other women, though not all part of this specific trial, have stepped forward. In civil suits with similar claims, this trial could be the beginning of justice, not just for one victim, but for many.
a limited amount of witnesses, it says something about how they feel about this case. They might feel that through cross-examination of key witnesses, key prosecution witnesses, and maybe just some of the text messages that came out, enough reasonable doubt has formed. There's nothing more for them to do. Now, you talked about Sean Combs not taking the stand. Yeah, as of right now, based on the scheduling, doesn't appear he's going to take the stand.
As we move closer to the verdict, the world is watching. Fans, lawyers, survivors, the media. Everyone wants to know, will Diddy fall, or will fame and fortune once again shield someone from accountability? No matter what the jury decides, one thing is clear.
However, he could wake up tomorrow. It's his decision and his decision alone. He could wake up tomorrow and say, no, I want to tell my side of the story. His attorneys can't stop him. He will take the stand. It's up in the air, probably not going to do it, particularly after the scheduling today, but we'll see. I've been shocked before. Maybe I'll be shocked again. Now, after all the scheduling, now after what we can anticipate for the rest of the week,
This trial has exposed the shadowy side of celebrity, and it won't be forgotten anytime soon. The very empire Diddy spent decades building is beginning to shift beneath his feet, as if no amount of money can hold the foundation steady anymore. And that's what this trial has done, not just put one man under legal fire.
we saw the continued testimony of this special agent for Homeland Security investigations, this summary witness, literally summarizing or condensing a lot of the digital evidence in this case. And it seems to me that the prosecutors are really trying to illustrate that the connective thread, this connective thread with Sean Combs, his associates, and Jane, alleged victim 2 in this case,
But forced an entire industry to look in the mirror. Who enabled him? Who stayed quiet? Who profited while victims suffered? These are the unspoken questions humming beneath every legal exchange, every exhibit shown to the jury, and every piece of evidence entered into record. And as closing arguments loom, the jury must answer only one question: is Diddy guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? But outside
to set up all of these wild king nights. So you're really placing Sean Combs in the middle of it. Not that he can't say, oh, I don't know what was being set up on my behalf. I showed up at a hotel room and I'm shocked to find what I found. Not so quite. And it's either that he was an integral part of this, assuming at the very least these were sites of prostitution, which is, transportation to engage in prostitution. The allegation being that he transported sex workers and alleged victims for the purposes of sex work.
Inside that courtroom, millions are asking something else entirely if justice really means anything when fame and fortune are involved. Because no matter how this trial ends, the impact will ripple through entertainment, through law, through culture itself. A reckoning that started with one woman's story has now touched a global stage. And once the verdict is read, whether it's days or hours from now, nothing, absolutely nothing will ever be the same again.
Or at the worst case for him, that these are sites of sex trafficking. So Elizabeth, before we even get into the audio tapes of Sean Combs, I want to ask you that about that separately. So I understand more flight records and the payment of travel. This was all discussed, as well as setting up the rooms for these sexual episodes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Jesse, I will say this about some of the summary charts that the jury was able to see today. It was something that a lot of us in the gallery weren't able to see because it had a lot of sensitive